Dawn broke over Greenhaven, a sprawling coastal metropolis of glass towers and sunlit boulevards. Most citizens were already bustling through morning routines. Buses groaned to life, vendors arranged fresh produce stands, and joggers threaded through parks. At the edge of the harbor, fisherfolk hauled in nets, murmuring about an eerie, churning swell they'd seen offshore. The news hadn't yet arrived at the city's heart, but the first tremors shook the shoreline, rattling windows. Across the skyline, gulls circled as sirens blared in the distance, a faint but unmistakable alarm. In a modest apartment nearby, Aidan Fletcher, a tall, lean young man with dark hair and sculpted features, paused mid-shave, instincts prickling. He shoved aside his shaving kit, heart pounding, and raced toward the window. Below, crowds already pointed to the bay, where water boiled as if stirred by an invisible hand. In minutes, the sea unleashed its fury. A massive snout, ridged and armored, broke the surface, the giant crocodile. Its eyes glowed an unholy amber as it emerged, tail thrashing, displacing boats like toys. Smaller crocodiles, dozens of them, flanked the behemoth, their jaws snapping. Panic rippled through the waterfront. Fishermen fled, hoses and nets abandoned, as the beast surged inland on makeshift rafts of debris. Terror-stricken citizens scattered, screams shredding the morning calm. Aidan lunged from his apartment, sprinting down the street toward the waterfront. He barely dodged a smaller croc's snapping jaws as it slithered onto the pavement. Nearby, a black sedan crashed into a fallen streetlight. Blood and chaos mingled. The air was thick with dust and the stench of salt water and gore. Among the fleeing crowd, Ilara Voss, a young woman of striking beauty with auburn curls and solemn blue eyes, navigated the chaos. As people trampled one another in fear, she knelt beside a fallen child, scooping him into her arms. Nearby, a smaller croc lunged at her. Ilara's nimble foot flicked a loose metal sign, sending it spinning into the beast's skull. The reptile recoiled, snarling, before retreating. Aidan arrived just in time to steady her as a wall of panicked civilians surged forward. Their eyes locked, his dark with concern, hers fierce with determination. He offered a steadying hand. She nodded, and together they forged a path through the mob. As they ran, another smaller crocodile barreled into them. Aidan shoved Ilara aside, taking a savage bite on his forearm. Blood spurted, pain seared through him, but he grimaced and helped her to her feet. Aidan and Ilara guided survivors toward a narrow alley leading away from the waterfront. Moonlit pools of water trickled from cracked pipes. Shouts echoed behind them. The crocs had discovered their trail. Ilara hollered instructions. Stay close. Move fast. A teenage boy tripped, his face pale. Aidan crouched, grabbing him under the armpits, dragging him forward. Ilara slashed at a pursuing juvenile crocodile with a broken piece of rebar. Sparks flew as metal met scaly skin. The beast yelped, turning back into the alley's mouth. The group, 5 adults, 2 children, rallied behind the pair. In the dim light, Ilara saw Aidan's bandaged arm, already swathed in makeshift cloth. His lips tightened, but he flashed a reassuring smile. That small gesture lit a spark of trust. They pressed on toward the city's interior, unaware of the true carnage awaiting them. The survivors emerged into the old quarter, where market stalls burned in licks of crimson flame. Wooden carts lay overturned, fruit and vegetables scattered, blood pooling beneath mangled bodies. Standing there, jaws agape, no one noticed the searing heat until a massive crocodile burst from a collapsed building, one of the smaller pack leaders. Flames licked its scaly flanks, giving it a demonic aura. Alara grabbed a broken table leg, brandishing it like a spear, while Aiden pressed his wounded arm to a ragged bandage, scanning for other threats. This way, Alara yelled, dragging the group toward a narrow archway. A toddler screamed. A small crocodile lunged. Aiden intercepted, tackling it into the blaze. The beast writhed as fire consumed its flank, screeching until its head caved inward. The survivors slumped in shock. Alara's lip quivered. Aiden's breathing came ragged, but he forced a bold nod, urging them onward. Aiden and Alara stumbled into Greenhaven Central Hospital, barricading its heavy front doors behind them. Inside, sterile corridors glowed under flickering fluorescence. Doctors and nurses frantically attended to the wounded until they collapsed in stunned silence at the pair's bloodied arrival. Alara guided a nurse to Aiden's arm while she pushed back tears. The hospital's makeshift security, orderly volunteers, slipped into panic when a deafening crash resounded from above. The ceiling trembled, tiles fell like hail. Suddenly, a massive crocodile slammed through the skylight, glass splintering like ice. Its jaws gaped wide, flooded veins pulsing along its snout. Scrambling, volunteers shoved gurneys to barricade the main corridor. Alara grabbed Aiden's arm, dragging him deeper into the ward, where wounded patients moaned. She kissed his blood-slicked forehead. He smiled through the pain. We'll make it. Together. In an attic-turned ward, surgeons worked feverishly to remove debris from atop wounded civilians. Alara found a bundle of rags and pressed them to Aiden's wound. As the nurse hurried off for supplies, Alara brushed dirt from his cheek. You're too brave, she murmured, voice trembling. Aiden half smiled, bloodied fingers grazing her jawline. He winced but held her gaze. I'm not brave enough unless I'm with you. Their foreheads touched. For a moment, time still. Below, distant roars reminded them of the carnage. Crocodile cries, collapsing buildings, terrified screams. From the attic window, Alara saw smoke billowing from the city center. She rested her hand on Aiden's heart. He squeezed her fingers. Neither of them knew if they'd survive, but in that moment, love triumphed over chaos. Night fell, and the city grid succumbed to darkness. In the streets below, the giant crocodile had laid waste to entire blocks, flattened cars, shattered storefronts, rivers of flames. From their high vantage, Alara and Aiden listened to the distant toll of church bells. Alarms echoed in unison. They rallied a small group of survivors, doctors, orderlies, a former firefighter, into a dim storage corridor. The plan: sneak through underground tunnels to the government bunker and broadcast a plea for military aid. Alara's voice trembled as she explained, if we don't get help by dawn, it's over. The beasts keep advancing. Aiden stood tall despite his pain, nodding, we'll do whatever it takes. Outside, shattered ambulances lay strewn across the courtyard. The hospital's gardens churned into muddy craters. Suddenly, frantic pounding on the corridor door, another survivor. She gasped. The ward's overrun. There's nowhere left to go. Torchlight illuminated damp brick walls as the group descended toward the ancient service tunnels beneath Greenhaven. Water dripped from corroded pipes, mixing with dirt at their boots. Aiden led the way, clutching a hefty wrench. Alara's arm brushed his back, eyes scanning for movement. Faint footsteps echoed, then the unmistakable hiss of reptilian breathing. Ahead, a cluster of smaller crocodiles had blocked their path. The survivors froze. A toddler whimpered in Alara's arms. Without hesitation, Aiden spun and struck the nearest croc skull with his wrench, shattering bone. The other beasts lunged. Alara kicked one into a wall, causing it to collapse onto the floor, teeth bared. The survivors drew makeshift weapons, tattered metal rods, broken pipes, surgical scissors. Each clash rang with wet, bone-cracking thuds. After a harrowing skirmish, blood pooled across the stone floor. The group pressed onward, hearts racing. Above them, the city's life was draining. They arrived at the ramshackle control room buried beneath the city. A dusty radio transmitter, its cables frayed, screens dark. Alara flipped switches, sending a spark through old machinery. A static crackle filled the air. They had one chance to broadcast. Aiden slumped against the wall, bleeding but determined. Alara's voice trembled as she spoke into the microphone. This is Greenhaven emergency. Hostile reptilian invasion. Giant crocodile and pack ravaging the city. Send immediate military support. Civilians trapped. She repeated coordinates and heart-wrenching pleas for help. Outside, the ground trembled, signs that the beasts had followed them. As Alara ended the broadcast, the transmitter's fuse exploded in a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed the room. The survivors braced for the looming threat. Bursting from the maintenance hatch, the survivors emerged into a plaza now submerged in knee-deep water, tinted red. The giant crocodile stood at the center, its maw opening to roar defiantly. Smaller crocodiles swarmed around, feasting on scattered bodies. Flaming vehicles bobbed in the water like burnt-out shells. The roar drew distant gunfire, hesitant shots that spattered bullets against the giant's thick hide. Aiden stepped forward, brandishing the wrench. Alara grabbed his arm. Wait. But he shook his head, eyes blazing. In an instant, Aiden sprinted toward the giant crocodile, tossing the wrench at its eye. The impact didn't faze the beast. It turned its head slowly, locking onto him. A wave of pain tore through Aiden as the croc's thrashing tail slammed him into a submerged lamppost. Alara screamed and charged with a salvage fire poker, but the crocs closed in. Bloodied and battered, Aiden rose just as Alara tackled a juvenile crocodile away from him. Together, they backpedaled toward a toppled statue, its stone base offering scant shelter. Bullets rattled against croc scales, distant tank engines roared. Though wounded, Aiden reached for a fallen soldier's rifle, handed to him by a dying Marine who whispered, "Protect her." With shaking hands, Aiden fired at a smaller crocodile lunging at Alara. His shot found its mark in its open maw, a spray of blood arcing skyward. Seething, the giant crocodile charged the statue, toppling it in a deafening crash. Dust choked the survivors. Alara crawled to Aiden's side, pressing her forehead to his. He coughed, blood trickling from his mouth. "I thought I lost you." She stroked his hair. "Not yet. We fight on." At last, the distant thunder of heavy armor drew closer. Tanks and armored personnel carriers rumbled into view, spotlight beams scanning the carnage. Soldiers disembarked, forming ranks and opening fire into the throng of crocodiles. Explosions shook the plaza as rocket launchers targeted the giant crocodile's flanks. The beast roared in defiance, thrashing through tanks like tin cans. Aiden dragged himself to his feet, grabbing Alara's hand. She urged him toward a nearby crater. "We can't stay here," she hissed. They crept behind a battered Humvee, watching as missiles exploded around the behemoth. A soldier barked orders. "Focus fire on the head." Bullets ricocheted as men and women in fatigues circled the giant crocodile, their determination pushing them forward. Slowly, the beast's movement slowed, its fiery eyes blinking as life faded. The giant crocodile collapsed with a tremor, sending shockwaves through the ground. Dawn broke once more, revealing a shattered cityscape. Smoking ruins lined every street, Corpses lay alongside shattered crocodile carcasses. Soldiers moved methodically, scattering burial markers for the fallen, both human and reptilian. A somber hush settled over the survivors as military chaplains conducted a brief memorial. Aiden, one arm in a sling, limped beside Alara through the devastated old quarter. She wore a simple white dress stained with mud and blood. He wore a faded army jacket cast over ragged clothes. Together, they knelt before a small memorial, a makeshift cairn of photographs and trinkets for the lost. Alara fingered a locket around her neck, a gift from Aiden. He kissed her temple gently, tears in his eyes. "We'll rebuild," he whispered. Alara nodded, voice thick, for them. Behind them, the sun rose over Greenhaven, illuminating the wreckage with golden light. Weeks later, reconstruction efforts were underway. Greenhaven's skyline was speckled with cranes. Volunteers cleared debris, and survivors planted saplings in fractured sidewalks. Aiden and Alara stood on a raised platform at the city's central square, addressing a crowd of thousands. Dust motes danced in the morning light as Alara read from a folded sheet. "We lost too much. Friends, family, neighbors. But here we stand, unbroken." Aiden lifted her hand high. The crowd cheered. Nearby, families embraced. Children smiled at the novelty of laughter returning to the streets, and the first green shoots of new life sprouted through cracked pavement. Overhead, rebuilding crews hoisted the city's civic crest, an image of a rising phoenix, above the municipal hall. Aiden looked at Alara, eyes brimming with pride. "We made it." She grinned, wind whipping her hair. "Together always." And as the city breathed anew, so did their love, resilient, brave, and eternal.